Judge laughs at black man in court, but is left stunned by his legal genius. The grand marble pillars of the courtroom loomed tall, standing as silent witnesses to centuries of justice, both fair and flawed. Inside, the echo of the judge's chuckle bounced off the walls, a condescending laugh that sent a wave of murmurs through the audience. "You mean to tell me you're representing yourself?" Judge Reynolds asked, barely concealing his amusement. "Are you sure about that, Mr. Carter? This is a serious trial." David Carter stood his ground, his face calm, his posture unwavering. A black man in his early 30s, sharp-dressed in a navy suit that fit him like a second skin, he exuded an air of quiet confidence that unsettled those who underestimated him. "Your Honor, I am more than sure," he responded firmly, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. "And I trust the court will allow me the same respect it would extend to any other attorney." Snickers from the prosecution table. A smug smirk from opposing counsel. David was accused of fraud, a charge he vehemently denied. The evidence against him, while circumstantial, had been enough to warrant trial. Most in the room assumed he didn't stand a chance. After all, he was just an entrepreneur, not a trained lawyer. But what they didn't know was that David had spent months in solitary confinement after his wrongful arrest, devouring legal books, studying case law, and preparing for the moment he'd get to prove his innocence. The trial began, and Assistant District Attorney Scott Jennings, a seasoned prosecutor with a reputation for crushing defendants, strutted to the center of the courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, his voice oozing confidence. "The evidence will show that Mr. Carter knowingly defrauded investors, manipulated accounts, and—" "Objection," David interjected smoothly. The room went silent. Judge Reynolds sighed. "On what grounds, Mr. Carter?" "Misrepresentation. The prosecution is making conclusory statements without providing any supporting facts. He's asserting guilt before presenting evidence, which is prejudicial." The judge raised an eyebrow, glancing at Jennings. "Sustained. Mr. Jennings, stick to the facts." David could see the prosecutor's jaw tighten, irritation flashing in his eyes. That was just the beginning. For the next several days, David dismantled the prosecution's case piece by piece. He cross-examined witnesses with surgical precision, exposing inconsistencies and highlighting gaps in their testimonies. "So, Mr. Hargrove," David asked, his voice steady, "you testified that you saw me signing documents on March 14th at 3 p.m., correct?" "Yes, absolutely," the witness replied. David walked to the evidence table, pulled out a thick file, and handed a copy of his plane ticket to the bailiff. "Would you mind reading the departure time on that ticket?" The courtroom held its breath. March 14th, 2:45 p.m. A hush fell over the room. "So," David continued, turning back to the witness, "can you explain how I was in two places at once?" The witness stammered, and the prosecution scrambled to object, but the damage was done. It was a moment straight out of a legal drama, and David was scripting his own redemption. Day by day, his intellect, preparation, and eloquence turned the tide. He cited obscure case law, exposing procedural errors the prosecution had overlooked. He deconstructed financial records, showing how another party had tampered with the numbers. He even used the judge's own past rulings to back up his arguments. By the time closing arguments came, the once dismissive Judge Reynolds now regarded David with something resembling respect. "Your Honor, members of the jury," David began, his voice strong but measured. "This case has never been about fraud. It's been about perception. It's been about assumptions made based on who I am rather than what I've done. But the facts don't lie, and neither should justice." The jury deliberated for just 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and cleared his throat. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Not guilty on all charges. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs, disbelief. David Carter, the man everyone had laughed at, had just outmaneuvered the system. Judge Reynolds, the very man who had mocked him, leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, I don't say this often, but that was one of the finest defenses I've ever seen. Have you considered a career in law?" David allowed himself the smallest of smiles. "Funny you should say that, Your Honor. I already applied to law school, and I start next semester." The gavel struck. Court adjourned. But David Carter's journey, it was just beginning. Part 2. Karen's viral nightmare and revenge plan. Karen Whitmore had never felt so humiliated in her life. By the time she landed in Miami, the damage was already done. The moment she turned her phone off airplane mode, it erupted with notifications. Texts from friends, missed calls from her boss, and the worst, hundreds of social media tags. Her face was everywhere. The video of her confrontation with Ava Sinclair had gone mega viral, with millions of views overnight. Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, there was no escape. Karen Gets Downgraded was trending at number 1, alongside Juhu Black Excellence Wins Again. Every comment was another nail in the coffin. Ava handled that with pure class. Meanwhile, Karen's racism got her downgraded. Poetic justice. Imagine being this entitled in 2025. Sit down, Karen. She should be banned from all flights, period. Let her drive everywhere from now on. Karen clenched her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. This wasn't just some embarrassment. This was career-ending. Fired and exiled. The real nightmare began when she checked her email. At the top of her inbox, a message from Whitmore and Associates Realty, her employer. Her heart pounded as she clicked it open. Subject: Termination of employment. Dear Ms. Whitmore, due to recent events involving your conduct at JFK Airport, we regret to inform you that we are terminating your employment with Whitmore and Associates Realty, effective immediately. Your actions do not align with the values of our company, and we cannot associate with behavior that tarnishes our reputation. You are expected to return all company property within 48 hours. Sincerely, Richard Donovan, Managing Partner, Whitmore and Associates Realty. Karen let out a strangled gasp. Fired? Over a misunderstanding? This had to be some kind of sick joke. Panic swelled in her chest. Her job wasn't just about income. It was her status. She prided herself on her social circle, the expensive brunches, the designer clothes. Without her position at Whitmore and Associates, all of that would vanish. But it got worse. Her country club membership was revoked. Her Facebook account was flooded with hate comments. Even the local news station had picked up the story, running the headline, "Racist real estate agent humiliated after profiling airline CEO." Her once glamorous life was now in shambles. The revenge plan, for the first time in years, Karen found herself alone. Her so-called friends stopped answering her texts. Even her fiancé, Greg, was suddenly reconsidering their future. But Karen wasn't about to go down without a fight. If Ava Sinclair thought she could ruin her life and walk away unscathed, she had another thing coming. Karen spent the next 3 days obsessively researching Ava. She dug deep into every detail of the Sky Nova CEO's life, looking for anything that could take her down. And then she found it. An article. Buried beneath pages of glowing reviews and interviews, there was a rumor about Ava's airline engaging in shady business dealings overseas. The details were vague, but Karen saw her chance. She reached out to a tabloid journalist, pitching a story that would paint Ava as a corrupt fraud. "This woman ruined my life," Karen seethed into the phone. "It's time I return the favor." The journalist, smelling blood in the water, agreed to run the piece, and just like that, the war had begun. Part 3. Ava Fights Back. Ava Sinclair had seen a lot in her career, but nothing quite like this. The morning after Karen's revenge article went live, her assistant rushed into her office, panic in her eyes. "Ava, have you seen this?" she asked, shoving her tablet across the desk. Ava frowned and picked it up. The headline screamed at her in bold letters. "Exposed. Sky Nova CEO's shady ties to foreign investors. Is she hiding millions?" Ava's eyes narrowed as she skimmed the article. It was filled with vague accusations, flimsy evidence, and heavily exaggerated claims. But the damage had already started. Social media was in a frenzy, and investors were beginning to ask questions. "This is a hit piece," Ava muttered, "and I know exactly who's behind it. Karen Whitmore." Ava had been in business long enough to recognize the desperate moves of a sinking ship. Karen was trying to claw her way back by dragging Ava down with her. But she had made one fatal mistake. Ava Sinclair never lost a battle. The power move. Ava didn't waste time. Within 24 hours, she launched a full-scale legal response, backed by one of the top defamation attorneys in the country. A cease-and-desist letter was sent to the tabloid, demanding a full retraction or face a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Next, Ava went on the offensive. She called a press conference, addressing the allegations head-on. "These claims are completely baseless," Ava stated firmly. "Sky Nova operates with full transparency, and we will not be intimidated by false narratives. We're already taking legal action against those responsible." The press ate it up. Within hours, the narrative shifted. Public sentiment swung in Ava's favor, with people rallying behind her. But Ava wasn't done yet. With the help of a private investigator, she dug into Karen's past. What she found was staggering. Karen's skeletons come out. Karen had built her reputation on exclusivity, but behind the scenes, she had a history of shady dealings. Several former colleagues stepped forward with stories of Karen's underhanded business tactics, discriminatory housing practices, fake listings, and even clients accusing her of fraud. Ava didn't even need to lift a finger. The moment this information came to light, Karen's world collapsed completely. The same news outlets that once covered her airport scandal now ran headlines like, "Ex-real estate agent who went viral for racism caught in fraud investigation." Karen's past comes back to haunt her. Ex-clients speak out. Disgraced former agent tries to take down CEO, fails spectacularly. Karen had officially destroyed herself. The final blow. By the time the dust settled, Karen Whitmore was bankrupt, unemployed, and completely disgraced. She tried to mount a defense, but no one wanted to hear from her anymore. Ava, on the other hand, came out stronger than ever. Sky Nova saw a boost in bookings, and she gained even more supporters for standing her ground. As she scrolled through the latest news, Ava allowed herself a small smile. "Nice try, Karen," she murmured. "But you should have known better." The end.